First, we'll have the land acknowledgement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're on the Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Next is the approval of the agenda. Move. Third, Councilor Thompson, second by Councilor Boyles. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, my nay. Motion carried. Is there any errors or omissions or corrections to the minutes of October the 5th, 2022? Are there any errors or omissions or corrections to the minutes of October 5th, 2022? One final time, any errors or omissions to or corrections to the minutes of October 5th, 2022? Hearing none, we'll consider those approved. Next is the reports. First is the building inspector report. By Councilor Wyman, second by Councilor Elliott. Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Count by nay, motion carried. Next is the bylaw dog control report. Councilor Boyles, second by Councilor Peel. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Count by nay, motion carried. Next is the development officer's report. By Councilor Boyles. Second by Councilor one. Questions? Board Parker.
Sorry, I don't have a question. I just wanted to, make sure we were two announcers for the media. I didn't,
Yes.
and I don't think there was.
Fine, no, they're just leaving now, so we decided not to wait. Okay. Next is Hurricane Verona storm restoration updates. First is the streetlights. Is Brian's going to lead us in this?
Sure. So on the issue of streetlights, there's staff have gone out to areas where we had reports of downed lights to retrieve them. We've also placed an order so we would have inventory in the event that the lights that are down are not usable, reattach as a whole. So we've placed an order for lights, any damaged ornaments and control lamps, things of that nature.
Okay. Any questions? Councilor Wood.
Brian, they feel like one of the streetlights should be maybe a map that, like, there's some streetlights that are often missing a lot. I'm not sure what the streetlights are.
We know where everything is supposed to be,
Right,
but ideally, I think if we get reports from residents that their lights aren't working, that might
that's why you couldn't generate.
quite a bit of interest, but they've been able to.
There is a map on our streetlights on our GeoHub as well on our website, so yeah, you can see every street.
Further questions? On to Hillside.
So the hillside chlorinator enclosure was delivered today. So there's still some work to do there to reconnect all the equipment, some electrical work to do there as well, but anticipate now that the enclosure is there by the end of this week, we should be back to normal operations on that.
Questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the landfill extended hours.
So the landfill extended hours, we did ask whether or not Mexicana Solid Waste could extend hours. They are not in the position to actually do that. They simply do not have the staffing resources to be able to do that. So those normal operating hours. They are continuing to waive tipping fees for anybody that brings in spoiled food waste or brush trees. So they're doing that at least till the end of the month.
That's fair.
In our Kenny logging to operate on Connolly Drive in District 8, near to the old drive-in, have been for years, allowing people to take brass dumps, organic material, and dump it there. I don't use of that facility today. I'm suggesting that we maybe should send that business a thank you. They've got a lot of stuff there. They're a little closer. Or most town residents are closer than the landfill site. And there's no fee. So I'm suggesting, asking Brian if he could send a thank you note to NR County Logging. I don't know the address of it. On the drive. Thanking them on behalf of the county residents, more county residents using the county residents. So someone is offering a free service to our residents. That's useful to them, particularly useful this time. We should remember to thank them.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay. Councilor Wallace.
Yeah, I just wonder if landfills are doing the same over there, because I've seen some trucks going up there with all kinds of trees and everything on it going in, so I was figuring if they didn't go to dump them up there, they must be doing for free.
Yeah, so Landfills is taking commercial loads, so rather than tying up trucks going into the landfill, they've diverted a lot of commercial stuff to landfills, so that's from the towns that are actively cleaning up. Just,
Send them a thank you note.
Let's imagine we get paid.
I believe they're just taking the material,
Use the material for.
what they can use it, where there's no, as far as I know, there's no.
We're not charging some bills. Agreed, send them a letter.
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, anything else? And we'll move on to the internet project.
So on the internet project, there's a number of spans on Hardwood Hill, that need the communication cables are still, were still down at the end of last week. So Nova Scotia Power will lift those lines and reconnect them to the new poles that were put in for, power running up there. Typically, it's done when the crew is there. They typically will put the communication back up. But Nova Scotia Power indicated to the project team that that area was done by from workers from inside of Nova Scotia. So they just, their goal was to restore power, type thing. So they will reattach the communication lines to the new poles. So that is expected to take place in the very near future. The fiber itself withstood the storm, even on the poles that fell. There's no breakages in the lines because we have signals from the network operations center here to the end. So we know we have light at the end. So there's no breakages in that. So that's a positive thing. That we didn't have anything on that.
Mr. Dick Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a question I had from a resident. I know that Eastlink and Bell have crews, equipment to go around with and help restore their lines. Do we, or will we, have a dedicated contractor to do repairs? We were somewhat fortunate in that we only had a small amount of fiber actually strung. There was damage with it. But when there's a fiber optic cable laying on the ground, of course, most people assume it's not working. Will we have a dedicated contractor? I'll put those back up.
So the answer is yes. So Telecom, our are doing it for us. They will be the company that will ultimately do it in the case of need a repair. They had actually identified crews outside of Atlantic Canada that they were prepared to send here to help. Didn't need them because we didn't have the damage, but they had identified crews in Quebec that would come in to do the restoration work. So it wasn't needed. So on the wireless side, the towers that were commissioned in September are operational. There are radios on each of the towers that are not operational. So on the 3 co-locations, they may have like 15 radios. There may be 2 or 3 that are not operating. And those co-locations are the same as when we had to install, only certain people are allowed to fly those. So we are in essence waiting for those companies to be able to climb. But on the wireless, all towers are expected to be operational by the end of December. So that's even the ones that are under construction. So everything will be completed by the end of December. We spoke with Industry Canada last week because we have the rapid response, and our original kind of target was everything would be fall. They have basically waived that requirement, so we had an extension to actually get everything operational due to the storm. So that's a good thing as well. So
Gordon Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're normally have all these towers on by the end of the year. So how many of them are up now? Like how many ever got monopoles, towers or whatever up on the sites now?
we have 6 that are complete or are standing out of the 14, so we have 8 left.
We have 8 that aren't up yet.
Right.
And because Councilor Butler's not here, we're gonna talk to him last night about this, we're gonna ask you about one in Daily Brook. Because it seemed to be confusion over somebody saying that the federal government had received the information and I think it's necessary, your opinion.
No, and I do follow up on that again. They've been, the agreement was signed in April, April 28th. And the terms of the agreement were that the survey needed to be completed within 6 months of the agreement being signed. So there was no requirement for the survey to actually be done for it to go to cabinet for approval. It was just based on basically a plot layout, and then the official survey plan would form part of the final lease. So the survey plan was submitted to them months ago. The team said they follow up on a weekly basis with the department to see where it's at, and the answer they get back is it's under review. So they have everything they need.
They have everything they need, but it's not yet approved by the federal government for that site.
No.
It's something to do with the survey.
And they have the survey, they have the legal survey. So.
So saying, we're aiming to have everything up by, going by year end, it seems like that.
Yeah.
Right.
But they do follow up on a weekly basis on that one, because everything else is ready to go. We have the tower. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wyatt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian, just back to the discussion on the company we have for running the cable, the telecoms, telecom level. Could they be in the same position though as Alliant and East Duncan, that they don't believe the power to be restored over the line? The power crew would have to be there before they can go on the cable. So there's still going to be a delay, just like we saw with East Duncan and the other telecommunications.
Yeah, so typically, correct, power goes first before they can go. But in most cases, like in our case where it wasn't broken, Nova Scotia Power, and they did along 376, they reattached because there was no break. So they just pick up, repull, move on, big thing. If there's a break, that's where telecom would come in, string whatever new cable is required, but they can only do that
What's,
after power is done.
we have, sorry, the towers, we require generators to go. And so we have them in place.
Yeah, so the towers, we did buy, actually through this, we bought generators to keep the towers operational. Which is fine, that we did that. It has become very labor intensive. And that's actually one of the jobs that Peloton did for us. They actually went around and maintained all the generators and kept them full. Because they had the crews here or a crew here, so they maintained their generator. So kind of as I guess a step back, we've kind of looked at the team is kind of looking at how do you make it resilient? So they're actually looking at other ways to power, so solar-based systems, things like that to keep them operational. So they're kind of going back to say, what's the best way to keep these operational? And that may be a solar installation in some cases that are just too remote.
Okay, everything's here, I was wondering what policy down there. Yeah, sure.
You know,
Just a quick question, so, Brad. Is our cable short? You had $1 million damage, it was short, through railroad.
yes, and no, right, it is one of those, we do insure. The tower sites, one of the things we're looking at, it's equipment, right? So it does fall in under kind of equipment. So on the tower sites, it's each plane or each tower would be looked at potentially as an individual plane. So the amount of damage that we actually had on each tower doesn't make up the deductibles, right? I think that, so it's a yes and a no answer. So one of the things we are looking at, even on the internet project, and like the costs of maintaining this through the storm, is filing that as an uninsurable expense to the disaster relief fund. And hopefully it will be coverage there. So
Can get up to 200,000.
no, we can get up to, there's really the 250 is the provincial program. What we're looking at is the federal disaster relief through provincial, like EMO. So once there's $1 million in expenditures in the province, anything above that can't be claimed towards this federal program. Now, I will say it'll be a long, drawn out process. When Hurricane Juan hit back in 2003, Halifax 10 years after the fact, we're still fighting planes, right? So they do say they made it easier. We'll wait and see type thing, but that's the intent.
Councilor Bud.
Yes, Mr. Chair. My question may have been asked already, but I'll ask it. Have we hired a person to deal with to assist us with the internet program?
We are in the final stages of doing that, anticipating a start early in November. Just waiting for some signed documents.
Can you give us a capsule of what the actual responsibilities of this person will be?
Basically keep the network running, is kind of the overall overarching part of it. So that's, making sure all the equipment functions, doing any programming changes that might be required because of an outage, be rerouting traffic, so it's anything from programming to installing new equipment, right? Could be new racks, new routers, could be anything like that, so. But it's basically keep things up at all times. That's kind of a very high level, there's very specific, and I can send the job description around, but that's basically the intent is the person will keep the knock. Their operations center here, operational 24/7.
Okay. Work hard.
To follow up on Councilor Butler's question there. So this person will be working everybody else 5 days a week, and 95 or 35, whatever. When something goes wrong, when he or she is here, then my understanding, if you do have somebody as a backup at that time, that happens on a Saturday night, you're not going to be calling the council.
Correct, so there's an overall surveillance program as well, which is basically third party. So they provide 24/7 monitoring off the network, so they're basically looking at whatever the error code is or whatever the error may be, and they will then determine how it is escalated. So whether it's escalated to our person or whether or not it's escalated to the retail ISP, right? They'll be able to basically determine it's not really a network issue, it's an ISP issue that needs to be dealt with. So they kind of vet the stuff and then dispatch the appropriate people as required.
If it's a Saturday night and it's a Santa Cup final, game 7, somebody's doing their watching on via the internet, somebody's available to fix it. It's not going to say, well, Monday morning.
That would be the hope. That would be the hope that there would be basically one of the things we've looked at from a response, if it's a physical break in, say, fiber, is like a 4-hour response time, which is kind of the industry standard, right? So that's where telecom have basically a 4-hour.
Make me pay for that word.
Right.
That'll be the way it is, right?
Some misery too.
So anyway, so that's the way it would work. There is built-in redundancies and even some things that we will do, like our person, like it happens on Saturday night, maybe it'll do it remotely from home, right? Type thing, or rather than coming in.
You don't want to call the council on the internet.
No, so ultimately that shielding should be there at all times.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further? Seeing none, we'll move on to district cleanup.
So I did circulate here this evening, just kind of a high level program for tree and brush removal. So the kind of the resources that we've identified to date, 3 mobile chippers and grinders. They are Ontario based and support vehicles. We've only identified 1 stationary chipper within Pictou County, and as of 4:30 today, we hadn't received a call back from their actual availability. And then 3 grapple trucks and 3 tandem vehicles for hauling chips, which are Pictou County based, but not available until the 1st of November. So this would be looking at doing basically a curbside pickup. I guess the intentions are that we would pick up material from anyone that requires assistance. We've established a tool behind the scenes, which would be web-based, so people can register online for it. We have the ability to also do a telephone registry. As well, we're also looking at doing some advanced scouting of areas through the spotter. And then that will generate the kind of the work program as we move forward. So kind of program details, we would have to basically establish when the program is going to start. So basically tell residents that their stuff curbside by X date. And we would start in a particular community and then we would just go from there. Materials must be placed on the curbside by whatever our start date is. Size of material. At this point, we don't have real firm, I guess, limits on that. The biggest one will be the diameter, I think will be the biggest restriction as far as length goes. These chippers can basically handle pretty much any size tree as far as I'm good. So it's tree and yard debris only, no construction or demolition waste. And they basically, part of our communication strategy is tell people be patient. I mean, this is going to take time to do. And just beware of crews and heavy equipment that may temporarily block roadways or reduce traffic to one lane. These chippers are mobile, so it will be more like a traditional kind of garbage pickup that we moving along. So we don't anticipate us necessarily shutting down roadways or anything like that. It's be more mobile. There could be a pace truck. Just warning people that there's work ahead. And then the rest is just around re-messaging solid waste at Mount William and the tipping fees for yard waste, leaving trees and yard waste continues to be waived until October 31st. And that may be extended beyond October 31st right now. That's the date that is being used.
Yeah.
And then the final page is just a budget estimate for this, and this really just comes from a number of discussions that we've had with people that are in the business, and it honestly is a shot in the dark. No qualms about it. It's a shot in the dark. Right? Like the normal solid waste pickup in the county is 10 days. Right? Just for, so you're looking at 10 days, basically 90 hours, right, to do the normal garbage run. Okay. So that's to say, this is simply just an estimate. We think we do pick up some efficiencies that the fact that we're chipping as we're going along and we're not hauling as much back. We think we will pick up some efficiencies that way compared to maybe towns that have been doing this for a week and a half now. The town of Glasgow, for a week and a half, they still have, they estimate 7 weeks left. And they're at about 25% pickup. But that's, when I talked to Lisa today, it was, we have street done. Something goes by, there's more material out, so they're having to recanvas, right? I don't think we want to get into that. It's for us, I think has to be a one-shot deal. Your stuff has to be curbside by such and such a date, and we go through, and that's the only way I think that works for us to see that person. So we're looking just shy of $1 million. Again, we would look to apply to the Federal Disaster Relief Fund to cover its extraordinary costs. question was before, if we can apply, whether or not they become eligible.
Councilor McKee.
And thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My question is about private roads. I know, Mr. Drew, we have a lot of private roads. Just wondering, is the plan to go on it as well, or how that affect those residents who live on private roads?
That's a very good question. We would look, I think, to do, if we can, that any road that is served by the, it's always no garbage collection, we would attempt to do them. There may be limitations where roads just, the equipment just won't fit. Right, that's the reality that we're going to face. There probably are some roads out there that we're just not getting any equipment down.
I guess my concern is that logging brush up to the end of the road and trees and such. And also, you know, some of those roads are accessible, so hopefully they can get the service if at all possible. Because a lot of those private roads are in desperate need of some help. So, thank you.
Councilor Dean Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Brian for this outline of this program. I think it's reasonably complete. We have to start advertising this both online and maybe some radio ads right away. People are aware, that people asking me. One fellow wanted to know if we could put stumps. That was the roadside, and I said, probably not. They don't go very well with chipper. And there are private contractors around that do stump ground. And I found a machine, sort of make the stump here.
Yeah, for the most part, I think stumps, he did say he could handle the majority of them. Actually, one of the pieces of equipment that he has is specifically for stumps, but we don't think it'll work here in Pictou County because it's rubber, it's tracked as opposed to tire, right? So it'd be harder to move around. So he actually has one that is specifically for that purpose, but we just don't think it'll work here. But he thinks he can handle the majority of the stumps as long as they're with his grinder. That was the indication he had given Devin, so.
Is there a certain diameter that you can handle?
I have to go back and look. I think it's up to a 3-foot tree, 3 feet round. Something like that. It's a large chipper, so. Yeah.
Councilor Dean Parker.
There's quite a number of older barns that are now have been flattened. I wonder if we should consider waiving the tip fees if those barns are put up. They can be quite substantial. Now, most of the people in rural areas, more rural areas, less urban areas, will say, they look after their own stuff, their own CED sites. But there are some that would be nice to have them cleaned up and gone. We don't have to decide it tonight, but we may want to consider go through the winter and then into the spring, offering an incentive to have the tip fee waived. They bring their materials to our site. And finally, I'm going to mention a business, Keystone Landscaping. My understanding, they have acquired or are in the process of acquiring a chipper that's capable of handling up to hardwood up to 2 feet by 2 feet. That's a pretty substantial machine. I don't know if they're available. I know they're a local company. I believe they're in District 6. Well, I think they may have made this decision prior to Fiona, but it's certainly a very timely one. Thank you.
Councilor Thomas.
Good driver on a portion of my district today, and there's not a lot of stuff on the road right now. Drove by some pulled out. It's just an observation. There's a lot of devastations in the trees that they haven't even gotten to. But I guess to the private roads thing, my concern is a similar concern I have with our extended season for solid waste and on these cottage, I call them cottage roads, but they're private roads. Is, with trucks, we're gonna get into wet season right now and how big are these trucks, and this machinery that's gonna be going possibly on these roads, because there's a lot of these roads wouldn't have the base to handle that. You're gonna create a bigger mess than what you're there to clean up.
That is, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the trucks that are used to pull these chippers, I believe, are single axle tractor trailers, so the argument about the weight, I would say, is probably a valid one in that sense. Those chippers are quite heavy, and both two of the chippers have a cab attached to the van and gravel as well, so that allows them to chip and roll, so that weight could be an issue with private roads.
It's something I think that the contractor will have to determine themselves, right? Whether they can take their equipment in, get out, or, you know, even turn around, so get in there, might not be able to turn around, feet back up, so it'd be on a road to road basis, let's say.
If residents are requesting that they go in these private roads, there's gonna be sometimes waiver that, you know, may or may not damage your road too, right? Because there's some, it could cause a lot of damage that would take a lot more money than chipping a couple of tree branches.
Yeah.
Be worth some.
That'll be something that they have to watch, that's for sure. Warden Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share that concern with the private roads. It really is up to the company to decide that they're not going to want to take any chance either of suing them for the damage to their private roads. So they're going to have to take that into consideration for sure. I think we're going in the right direction here. I see them hauling branches in town. I mean, they don't get much on a truck. You can compact branches all you want, they just bounce right back up at you for the most part. We would spend, I know there's some on here for hauling, because of some areas that are more remote or whatever, I guess, but, you know, we would spend a tremendous amount on fuel. Plus, if we're looking at the environment, the amount of carbon going into the atmosphere with those trucks rolling with a, you know, very, very light load on them, but they still put in a lot of gases. As much as the price is pretty high, I think our public is very much expecting this. We told them from the first that this is the one thing we were going to try and help them with. I agree with Councilor Thompson that as you drive up and down the road, you don't see house after house happening there. But you're just in the distance from here to my place, I know there's several that have a lot of that they're expecting. We're going to pick that up. That expectation is the first, mostly because the towns are doing it, so I think we owe people that, it's people's tax money that we're looking at here, we're hoping to get some, help from the, other levels of government, it's still tax money, but, there's no choice but to help people clean this up, I don't think, and, I just wanted to ask a question on, terms of the chips. My understanding is that chips will simply be blown back into where they came from the natural environment, and they act as mulch and as fertilizer to some degree. There are going to be some areas where there's not a lot of place to blow it. The lawn and the lawn and they goes together. What is the plan if you can't roll them just back into where they came from?
So the first two grinder and chippers are more for the rural area, and they're intended to basically blow chips back into the woods. The smaller chipper, the 350, is a residential area, one that would be used in residential, and it basically dumps into a chip truck. And the chips are hauled away, so it blows into a truck. They're hauled away. So
They go where?
that's the destination of the final chips will be determined. It might be the landfill, right? We might have to take.
Sure, the environment, I think for that kind of chip, you know, that has bark mixed in with it. the production paper, I think we'll take chips, but they have to be clean chips.
Yeah, so it's mainly cover. Landfill. I think so that is the plan. The company that is Ontario based has done this in a number of communities right across Canada. So they've, worked in Fort McMurray, I believe. They last year did the ice storm in Quebec. So they have basically the knowledge and experience to do it. So their plan is where they can dispose of naturally, that would be the plan, but any place that for cosmetic or aesthetic reasons, they would haul the chips out of that queue.
One or two more things that I make, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So a lot of people have blocked wood, sitting in the yard, to see it, it's all been cut up in nice little piles of wood, they have these trees here and there. That's still useful wood for a lot of people to burn. Is it meant for people to haul that out to roadside, or ever I see people put a sign up, say free firewood or whatever, then to haul all that out for us to pay to chip it? Can we get that message out there that we're really doing this for chunks of trees and branches and stuff, not for valuable wood?
Yeah, no, exactly. This is stuff that you want gone, right? And our plan is to chip. We're not selling firewood or relocating firewood or anything like that, so we can certainly include that.
It just worked out, people hauling all the chunks of good wood there for us to chip, but there's lots of people that will take that wood if somebody sticks a sign up saying free wood, I'm sure.
Drop it off the ring.
There you go. The other thing I wanted to say, Mr. Chair, was what CAO mentioned earlier, is patience. I think we really have to ask people to really, yes, we're on track to do something. That's the main thing people want to know. But it is gonna take a bit of time to get to everybody. And we're trying to get everybody done before the snow blows, too deep anyway. I think you have to be patient, and if they know, if we put it out right away and they know that they can do this, then I think there'll be more people put it out. Right now, people are kind of wondering, well, I'm not sure whether to put it out there or burn it or back in the house, because I'm not sure they're coming. I think it's very important that if we pass this tonight, that we let people know right away that we are going to be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Elliott.
Robert asked a couple of questions I wanted to know the answers to, but one is, will everybody be included if they don't register? Is it something you have to register for?
Ideally, yes, but if we have Mrs. Smith on Three Brooks Road, in all likelihood, we're going the entire length of Three Brooks Road, right? So it's really identifying the roads. And part of what we're also looking at is through the spotter program is trying to identify in advance which roads need it. So we're working on a couple of different strategies there on who might spot for us, including the current hauler of solid waste. So because they're doing the routes, so if they can identify for us now as well. So we're looking at different ways, but one of the complaints we will get is I didn't know I had to do it, right? It won't matter after we advertise it, we will inevitably have that. And so really for us, it's about identifying the areas that we need to go in. So the registry will do that, and then the spotters will help fine tune it.
Is it safe to say it will be done by district in order 1 to 12, or no? Because I want to get 25 more calls. I'd sooner say.
I would say it'll be done logically. So we may start in, and one of the things we haven't met with the contractor yet, he basically, once the council green light says he will come in this week, he'll fly in on Wednesday, he'll be doing an assessment of how he would see it rolling out, type thing. But it's probably, we will start in one area and just continuously move. That's where the patients will come in. Right, the one chipper, like the smaller chipper, will probably go to communities that have density, right? So it'll probably get moved to like where John already have a good density of residential, where he's probably not able to mow it back into the ditches or into the woods type thing, so those communities will be more strategically planned with that chipper.
So should councilors be taking any information or directing them to a number? What
No, I
is
think
the
once
answer?
we get this established, push everybody to either the online registry or the phone number, right? And then that's captured, right? So the online phone number, it'll be an auto attendant. You basically leave your name and civic address. That's all we need to capture. And yeah, if you consider it really gonna be anything, it'll just need civic address. Right, and so we'll capture it that way. The online will capture it. Right, so
So my last question is, how soon will the residents be notified of the information that you just said?
So if council basically agrees to this tonight, tomorrow will be probably a logistics day to set up, make sure the online portal works, the telephone works, develop the advertising for it, because we will use our own channels, but we'll probably also use radio to get the message out. And so I would say we're probably looking Wednesday, Thursday for it to start the advertising campaign. And pick up probably starting sometime next week.
Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions on, the hours we know are gonna be 10-hour days. The days we're not sure of. Are they wanting to guarantee 25 days or they, if they're here for 14, is that fine? Or 30?
Yeah, no, he did ask the question what we anticipated it being. But he wasn't looking for a minimum. So we basically kind of said in our mind, talking to everybody that does collection and we figured it probably was 25 days, but he wasn't looking for a minimum.
And the actual rate, that is the rate, is it? That's his rate?
The $1,000 an hour, the 900 and 700, those are
Right.
his rates, and the mobilization rate is what he has
So that,
provided to move
that
the
includes his crew and, all.
Yeah.
Did or.
Yeah.
Sleeping, like, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, just the 3 trucks, are they gonna be here from, again, the Truckers Association? You said they're gonna be,
No, so the 3 trucks that are shown under collection and trucking, that is for Hagan. Using his equipment, it's actually 6 vehicles, it's a truck for collection and a truck for also, if necessary, like it's a moving target for us, so we kind of see that being, I guess, to the areas that we don't have a lot of necessarily density to pick up, so sending those vehicles out for the 2 or 3 homes that might be on a particular road, right?
just the last question, is just interesting, the rebate for that community.
Oh, so the HST, it's basically, we get 100% of the federal and 57% of the provincial component, so I just had to do that calculation to show.
Thank you.
Council Watt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm so pleased to see this coming forward tonight. I know majority of my calls last week and a half have definitely been on how we're going to help our residents, especially with the debris. Concern with private roads, of course. The private roads are handled through waste management. Perhaps we get the message out there that we following the guidelines of the landfill. That way he's the pain of some of them that won't have the take up on their private roads, but they can still haul stuff to the end of that road. Yeah, so that would be an option for them. I'd like to see councillors perhaps a little more involved in just knowing what area they're going to be going to. We can get a schedule, even we'll be aware of what the schedule is, so that we can at least get that back to our residents of where they're working that day when they do plan. I'm sure at some point to be a plan as to when they'll be in their areas. That would be good. Looking at about 25 days, again, it's so good to see that being done prior to the heavy winter weather. So I'm really pleased with that. So I would like to make a motion that we accept this proposal for the debris removal.
What's that?
Seconds. Okay. So,
going to be such a pain, Mr. Chair. The only thing that costs me, I think I will be able to paper program that our residents want and need. Just have to remember that we are now setting precedent. Next time there's a storm, bad storm, don't want the game. But that's reality. This was a bad storm. A lot of it really be picked up. Thank you.
I get a couple of questions, if you don't mind, but just. There's a couple of issues that I see, and I think that we should look into. One thing was chips, putting them into the woods. If I own the woods that you're putting the chips in, I might not want those chips. So you have to be very careful where you place those chips, right? Like if you get lawn, and then down the road a little bit, you get woods, and it's my property. You're going down the road, we're going to chip all these trees, throw them into my property. I know property owners will have an issue with that, right? The other thing that I see that probably is going to be a problem, I don't think that is traffic control. These are big machines and everything like that. They'll take up the whole lane of the road. So you're on the hill and you get traffic coming up over the hill and you get traffic going over the hill. You have to have traffic control because that's the problems will land in that. So that's another issue that you got to look into before. Certain things like that. There'll be roads, the private roads you won't have to worry about, but it's provincial highway roads, and when you have machines such as this on those roads, you don't have to have the proper traffic control. Okay. That's something that's.
Those are discussions that we've had with the contractor so far, and there are probably some logistics that still need to be worked out. But we've had those type early conversations with them around how does this work, right? And because it is it's a mobile thing, right? I think so. We had to add that in.
I think it's something that you should probably contact the area manager, Rick Chisholm, to run it by him, just to say this is what we're looking at doing before we go ahead and do it, and then start having problems with it, with the contractors in the area. So it's better to work it up now. Councilor Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one quick question. How do we deal with this financially if we don't get assistance?
Rate,
What's that?
tax rate is really where you're at. It is something, I mean, we do have reserve funds as well that could, in theory, but ultimately those are driven from the tax rate as well. That's the unfortunate reality. If the other funds don't come through, it falls back to.
The other thing is, let's say you stay here for 3 months. It's going to be like 3 million.
Well, I think that's something we'll be able to probably determine as we get into this, like if we see us moving dramatically from this, then we'll come back, right? And then it's tough, as I said, right up front, this is a ballpark. I wouldn't say I'd offer any high level of confidence of even on this is best guess that we have.
I drove my district in to, like with most parts of my district in. Really, I don't see a whole lot outside the curb right now. A lot of people had their trees removed and things like that, yards cleaned up already. And the village of Thorburn is through there, and there might be a couple there, but there was a lot. But I think the residents looked after each other and they took it away and things like that. So, maybe it's not as big as we think it is either. Some areas it might be, but some areas might not be.
Yeah, and what we tried to do was estimate like a number. So the number of hours that we had in here is really based on what we would see. I think we said 10 minutes per stop. We roughly had 11,000 dwellings. And we estimated that 75% of them may require some level of service, right? So that's how we kind of came up with our estimate, and then the hours that would cover that. I think that's, but as I say, that's a shot in the dark.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you. Are we looking after the spotters or the?
So depending on, like, part of the spotting, when we said spotter, in here, it was to identify the roads that may need to be done. So as I said, that's, we're looking at, GFL helping us with that, identifying roads as they're doing it. Same thing, and, but on the traffic control side of it, that'll be a further discussion we'll have with the contractor.
So the spotters are prior to the lot that are.
Right. Yeah.
Once we announce the program, you might have a lot more taking stuff to curb too. So
Exactly, and that's why we, basically will say it has to be curbside by such and such a date, so we can actually do that assessment. There will be a few stragglers, but that's really why we need to set that date, and it will be a quick turnaround, right? It will be, like, if we get this out Wednesday, it may be next Monday that it has to be curbside, right? Because if he can be here within that time frame to start, we want to get it going as quickly as we can. So it could be a very quick turnaround as well.
Okay, first question on the floor. All those in favor, or motion on the floor, sorry, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, nay. Motion carried. Okay. No, it's going through that 5 minutes, so look at that.
And you don't know.
I said, Robert Park Council. Just had it. Next is emergency resolutions. Emergency resolutions. Seeing none? Meeting adjourned.
All right, everyone, we'll call the financial services meeting to order. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. First, we have the approval of tonight's agenda.
Seconded.
Okay, moved by Councilor Royal, seconded by Councilor Parker. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Motion by nay. Motion carried. Next, we have errors and omissions or corrections of minutes for October the 5th. Go ahead, Councilor Elliott.
Not that it makes a large difference, but there's no titles on deputy commissioner. Counselor Burgess listed as present.
Okay. Any other errors or omissions, corrections? One last time, any other errors or omissions and corrections? Seeing none, we'll mark those minutes as approved. Move on to our reports for the month of September. First, we have the emergency services report. Any questions or comments? Pleasures, councilors. Moved by Councilor Wyden, seconded by Councilor Elliott. See no questions, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have the warden's report for September. Moved by Councilor Boyle, seconded by Councilor Elliott. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. Motion carried. All right, Councilor Wyden, we have the NSFM report for month of September.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The NSFM board, we have the deputy minister, the fresh, always and Tech. Get updates on the emergency created by Hurricane Fiona and on Tesla. Mason advised to continue to work through the recovery phase of so many areas of clarity needed to proceed. The disaster financial assistance program has been announced. And with many applicants coming forward, they're in the process also providing assistance to apply for funding from their programs, as well as much other work such as monies to try and help clear debris. He's had discussions concerning tree and debris removal with Public Safety Canada. The clarity around this issue is still being worked through. Normally, trees are only looked after if they fall in the building, so whose responsibility is to help clear all the trees? Most areas impacted by Fiona are in the same position because at the end of the day, there is no legislation either provincially or federally to determine how we clean our areas up. There was not much information on the issue concerning NSP, except they plan to harden their grid, although no information was discussed. The French advised that we should have a rep from NSP meet with us to have this discussion. The lack of coordination with the NSP was prevalent in all areas of the province. As far as telecommunications goes, changes to the MO with more consultation with these groups is needed. Cell service or the lack of it or the generators required to maintain their cell service was another discussion which needs to be had with our telecommunications companies. The fact many could not access 911 continues to be a huge issue that needs to be resolved. Have discussed the marketing levy legislation which was passed in the House on Friday. Basically, it's a levy which can be administered by municipalities for up to 3%. The good news here is that it will be common legislation across the province for all municipal units to use. On public housing, Mark Peck is now the interim coordinator replacing Steve McIsaac. There are housing commissions set up across the province, with our area being included in the eastern zone, which includes Guysborough to Amherst and then through to East Hants. Brian Darrell will be the interim lead for our area, with the plan to zone for 4 months, and then a permanent office will be set up with the CEO and the board of directors for each area. We discussed at large the problem with generators, especially non-existent or not working in our seniors' homes. Currently, there is no generator policy or maintenance of the generators that they do have. So this is being looked at by the province with the hope that a policy will be established to ensure something like this does not happen again. Bonnie, on the service exchange, still doing well with all elements. Optimistic something will be back in municipalities for a presentation perhaps by Christmas, but keep in mind that it is on to spring legislation, and if it is passed at that time, there is a 12-month notice to go out. The fresh probably the doubling of provincial tax money will continue, but the distribution will be based on a decision by Treasury. So this distribution may be different than how it was done this past year. The ministers finally signed off on the Sustainable Communities Program, so November 1st is the proposal launched. Code of conduct policy is still going on. Total cost is still being calculated, and a formula being devised for cost sharing. And an update by Mike Milton from the AMA. There was a meeting with municipalities who have their own regional police forces, and needless to say, there are many concerns with what is happening with our CNP coverage and how some of these additional changes will impact all municipalities. Losing our CNP tier support, such as support for dealing with organized crime, could become a huge issue. The province is looking at 4 different modules for policing, but no information has been forthcoming on this. We know all 4 options, but only one will be forwarded, but the Police Association would like to see all 4 and perhaps a 5th make out of that discussion. Our conference is still a go for November 1st and 4th, with our caucus meetings now planned for Tuesday afternoon, so we can have our caucus elections. The schedule did have to be arranged due to our inability to move forward with our restructuring. Tim Houston will be present, as well as Sean Fraser has agreed to appear. There was not enough time to schedule a discussion concerning our restructuring within our conference, so we are currently trying to work on a date to hold an in-person meeting for this discussion. This is just a brief overview of our meeting with Friday, but any questions I will try to answer.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Watt. Go ahead, Gordon Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to take it back, I guess, on the restructuring, because we were, when things did work out on the telephone call, the last attempt at the restructuring, sort of agreed there that it would be done in person at the call meetings, because it was felt that by several on that call anyway, that doing it remotely it wasn't going to work. And, you know, we're getting anywhere after an hour and a half. So I hadn't heard before this, that that restructuring has now been put off to a later date.
Yeah, there just wasn't time to move in the conference, but the other things we had to do concerning the caucus meetings and the resolutions, all those things that be brought forward again, because the rest restructuring didn't take place. So there had been a hope that they would be able to fill it in sometime during the hours, when we had all the members there, or majority members there, but it just wasn't possible to schedule it, so now we're looking at scheduling further into the year. And we don't have the time for that, but it's definitely going to be an in-person meeting.
It has to be. One or two more, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
So I thought the police, there was gonna, it's been an issue, it's been around for quite a while, I know Cumberland and protest have been dealing with it for a while, but we sort of put it off for a while to see how they may do. But I thought NSFN had arranged a meeting and it had to be put off, if I remember too, for some reason, but now it seems like the government already has some options before we meet, or.
Yeah, this is an update by Mike Goldie from the AMA. They had a meeting, and I think it was Colchester government counties that had the meeting with their regional police, anybody with their regional police force. We're governed by the RCMP, I don't think we were the regionals, but that was the outcome that he gave us from that meeting. It's the concerns that they're having is that the province is supposed to have 4 proposals, but they haven't released any of them to the police associations yet. And they're hoping they will release all 4, but they don't. The problem is released 1. That's the one they're going to go with. So I'm hoping we get a change in that.
If NSFN is leading us and a number of councils have done this on their own, is there going to be a meeting of NSFN?
NSFN is not leading this. This is the AMA.
I had thought we received something NSFN saying there was going to be a meeting about the police information across the province, but they had to put it off for later date. You're saying it wasn't NSFN was going to be a meeting?
No, not this. This is for Mike Dalton and the AMA.
That one, but was there going to be an NSFN?
They are planning to schedule a meeting, yes, but there wasn't enough in place to schedule a meeting. It hasn't gone forward yet. Juanita, I think, is involved with the RCMP federally, with the commission of the RCMP federally, and I think trying to get information from that before moving forward with the meeting. They just got enough information yet.
I advise in the way that, that some meetings were held with some councils, because but neither Colchester nor Cumberland is regional. I don't think they have RCMP the same as us. Sure that, but I don't think they're regional.
No, this is a regional policing. These are towns that have their own regional policing. That was my understanding of it.
Okay, and one other comment, there was no Scotia Power. They're going to look at herd the grid. I have no idea what that means. That grid, as they call it, those poles with wires on them, are terribly important, not only for, we mentioned earlier this evening, power transmission, but they're also for communication transmission, which becomes more important to us because when we get our own on the poles. But I think it's time that the government or being pushed by NSBA or whoever to look at that. I'd like to hear a description of herd and grid. Even they said the only thing they can really do, if they don't own the trees, is to get those trees out of the way so they're not blowing on the pepperwires. That was what was expressed to us in the meeting we had with them anyway, but I hadn't heard the term before, I heard the grid. That's we're gonna spray it or something. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That's what Paul the question. That's how he said it was. He had no more information other than they said they were going to harden the grid. But he said we'd be better off having a representative tell topics than for him to get that information.
Any further questions? Okay, we'll move on to the power report. Councilor Wyman.
Since the launch of our new library system called Same Page, the regional library has seen a 55% increase in the circulation of books, magazines, and other materials compared to pre-COVID numbers. The increase in the number of books moved between regional libraries has stayed steady at approximately 650%. Meeting materials are being well shared across 8 regional libraries outside Halifax. We have received a $28,000 grant to redesign and continue development of our digital heritage platform, novastory.ca. Unique among public libraries in Canada, we have over 30,000 items related to Pictou and Antigonish history in the collection. It's including books, photos, maps, letters, and more. This grant will allow us to renew and expand our popular site, novastory.ca, which has over 120,000 visits per year. Our library branches came through the storm, Fiona recently well, Once Victor Westville settled into the Antigonish Library's retained tower, we immediately open to the public as a place to be warm, connect to the internet, charge devices, have coffee, and find information. Our staff have been trained to work with people in difficulty, and their passion was appreciated by everyone. Antigonish Town and County Library was a center for warming and comfort shelter in the town and surrounding areas, serving food and providing assurance and cooperation with town and county recreation staff. As an example, we served 1,200 people on Thursday between 9 and 5. This is a further example of libraries as valuable community spaces.
Okay, thank you for your report, Councilor One. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to accounts paid for the month of September 2022. Is there any questions, comments? Go ahead, Councilor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if anyone can answer these, and one is a curiosity. 19317 from the top Mount Everest. Check cover 2 items, not large items, but what was it?
What was the check number?
19317.
That's good. I think it's recreation.
So, the other one nearby, 19332. Hilliard and Ryan received $12,000 for a lease. So it's for a tower.
Correct.
That says August lease. Is that an annual lease? Or
No, so that would be the 10 years.
10 years?
For it, but
Maybe it's not a fixed rate of 100,000 a year.
yeah, so done in August. But that's for the 10-year period.
Thank you. That's all I have.
We have no motion on the floor. If someone would like to make a motion.
I'll move it.
Okay, Derek Morgan, and moved by, seconded by Councilor Parker. Any other questions for the accounts paid for September? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have our deed transfer tax fund. This is again for information purposes. You see that we're still doing very well, significantly down from last year, but still going very well. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to our taxes receivable report. For September 22, so you can see that this was just a few weeks before taxes were due, so I assume that October will be quite a different story. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, move along. In your package, we're going to number 11 here, Department of Municipal Affairs MGA review. So they're doing a consultation survey that we received in our package here. Brian, do you want to add some comment to that?
So when this originally, it came out to the administrators, there was clarity sought, and it was really one response per municipal unit, is what they were seeking. Many of the units that are here, suggested in this survey or administratively, kind of just bring us into the modern way of doing it, allowing for electronic notices, things like that, of that nature. So a lot of the first questions are around that. That just makes sense that you have to post it electronically as opposed to using print media, especially here. It makes it production when you police like electronic delivery and receipt of tax bills, preliminary notices of sale. The tax bills is not a, it's doesn't have a lot of concern because you could actually somewhat do that today. But the way it was structured was that the way the MGA is actually worded was that you have to deliver by mail. And the only legally licensed entity to deliver mail in Canada is Canada Post. So Canada Post had actually developed a post program that was implemented. And we had signed up to get into it. And they actually pulled the plug on the program and gave a notice, so that they abandoned it. I think, so this would allow for different ways of doing that. Preliminary notice of tax sale, I would say maybe a little bit of concern around that, just in you would have to have some level of assurance that it was delivered, and you would have to prove delivery, I think. Around that, like if we send a preliminary notice out to the warden that we're going to sell this property and he doesn't get his mail, we get that back, right? So we know we receive it, but if you do it electronically, you have to have the processes in place that would be able to track delivery or non-delivery type thing. So a little bit of concern maybe around that. Submission of planning documents, that just seems fine. A lot of the development things around planning, really, I guess we don't have planning at this point, so it's tough to say whether they're good amendments, bad amendments, but we're not dealing with them on a regular basis, but most of them seem fairly straightforward as far as what you would allow. So those would be my general comments. Sure.
Any other questions or comments on the review? Go ahead, Councilor Warren.
Just one comment from the NSFM perspective. This was sent out to our offices, go out and return it back because we're going to speak. NSFM couldn't speak for itself because she was head of the municipalities. So if there was something identified within this survey from a majority of municipalities, that's something we can look at to the NSFM. But for Pittsburgh,
Okay, thank you.
It wasn't well communicated on the intended audience, and whatever, it wasn't real clear who should be completing it, but it was meant to be a council.
Warden Parker?
Madam Chair, I guess I'm just a little concerned that, you know, in terms of sending tax bills to people electronically, as long as we get it in such a way that, you know, we ask people if this is the way they want to go. That's how most companies, larger banks, insurance companies, they say, do you want to receive these paper copies anymore, or is it fine if it's online? As long as we have permission for people to send them online, we maybe they were send 50% of it online, 0% of other stamps. But I don't know where they're going with this, but I wouldn't want to see it suddenly just announced that your tax bills are now electronic.
No, and even the Canada Post program wasn't opt-in, you had to opt into it, so I would assume that legislation would be the same, like it's not meant that that becomes the way,
Yeah.
it's an option for residents.
One other, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Page 15, retroactivity of deemed easements prior to 1998. I'm just sure what that means. I can't help but think of some of these, and there was one on the news again this morning, one here in your district, I think, here in this similar to a pathway easement or something that people have used for a long time, the deemed easements. That, yeah, can you explain that one? There was, Brian, is what you got to apply here?
Yeah, I think it is, the lots, if they're shown on subdivision, are And there's a private right of way established there that as long as they're there prior to 98, then it's deemed that they have access over that private right of way.
Yeah, I think that's at the heart of a lot of these, problems that we're having, not just in this county, but others, in my district, or I think it's actually in Zachary Ward's, you know, the person I did for one time. There's a subdivision, one of the nights that, you know, that all those people had an easement to go down to the water, on the other side of the road, the other side of 376, but suddenly the government sold the little piece along the lake there. They sold that piece and that block, deemed access to the water for all the rest of the people. But I think there's definitely a problem, whether this addresses it or not, in people trying to access places that they've accessed for a long, long time, and suddenly somebody buys it, or the government tells people to land somebody, that access is gone, that causes all the disruption in the community. Just wondered if that one might apply here. You?
Very much. Deputy Warden Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we vote?
She was just.
Okay, sure. Okay. We'll make that motion. Okay, Deputy Warden, you seconder. Okay, seconded by Councilor Connor. Sorry, go ahead, Councilor Waddington.
Just to clarify for Warden Parker, on page 4 of the electronic delivery, it does say the recipient still have the option for in-person delivery.
Yes, just like every bill or everything you receive, you have the option for paperless or.
That won't always be there, but we need.
All right, any final comments or questions? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary nay. Motion carried. Okay, so next we have Public Works vehicle tender results. So you see, we had discussed this earlier, previously at our financial services meeting. You see that we have 3 bidders there, Heron GM, Kelly Honda, and Highland Nissan. And given the recommendation from Logan McDowell, our Director of Public Works, is that we move ahead with purchasing 2 vehicles from Highland Nissan. The Nissan, I don't want to say that, Qashqai. Sure. Were they right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's his recommendation moving forward. Any questions or comments on that recommendation? Go ahead, Warden Parker.
Maybe we've already been told that we forgot, that is, the word contractor being unable to fill the contract. So is that for hybrid, is that what that was, or what was the, because I thought we were going to for 2 tests.
Yeah, so we had originally, Public Works had put out for 4 vehicles, 2 trucks and 2 SUVs. The Highland Nissan was the successful bidder at that time, and then the 2 SUVs became unavailable for delivery to the model that they had bid was no longer being made, so they couldn't fulfill the requirement for those 2 vehicles. But we were at a point, they were the only bidders on the trucks and we needed the trucks, so we did take the 2 trucks, and then we put out for the purchase of 2 SUVs, so we went back to our other 2 SUVs and then now being a different vehicle. But at the time when we had done that, and had the conversation with them, they were looking, they did have an option, but it was more than 10% in costs of what they had to replace the vehicle. So typically procurement rules, if you exceed 10% modification, that's outside. If you need 10%, it's generally accepted, but they were outside of 10%, so that's why we went back.
I'm sure, committee, and pass something to put it to the council, or move it on the council. We, you know, hopefully have it invested by electric vehicles that are available, you know, not that they're not. So for these Rest it be dark, that's the end of the word, dark,
Yes. Yes, so they were, as part of the spec, preference would be given to anybody that could supply hybrid and electric, and this one, nobody could beat that. Sure.
Okay, that's fine. It is, thank you.
Okay. Moved by Councilor Palmer that we accept the recommendation of the Director of Public Works and purchase vehicles from Honda Nissan, cash price to them. Okay, seconded by Councilor Parker. Any final comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. Carried. Okay, next we'll move on to 13, electoral boundary review.
Sure, so I did circulate in the package just kind of a summary of the public participation program that we had on the boundary review. I think that wasn't well attended, I guess would be the general feeling. The 3 meetings, we didn't have anybody arrive. The couple of meetings, I think we had more councillors and public at them, but it is what it is. We did an extensive advertising campaign around it, so we ran ads in the paper, social media, every day at the meeting. There was a reminder that we're meeting tonight, things like that. So we definitely put the word out on that. And just unfortunately, we just didn't see the results from that. So as we went through the process, we were really asking people, do you believe that the current size of municipal council is appropriate? So we did seek that feedback at the meetings, and we had also advertised an online survey as well, and we provided the presentation online so people have the information. So on the size of council, 12 people thought that the 12 was the appropriate number. Only 2 responded that they did not agree that the number should be 12. One of them had actually suggested that it be 13, and the other suggested that it be 8. So one was actually the increased size, and one to decrease. We also sought feedback on the current system of governance between the mayor and ordinance system. And again, 10 people responded for the ordinance system, and 3 had suggested the mayor system. I guess kind of as a summary, pseudo recommendation, I guess, based on the feedback received at the sessions and through the online survey, we hear that an application to the utility review board for the status quo would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Any questions or comments on that? Go ahead, Councilor Parker.
The people are extremely satisfied with the current government, and they don't give a damn. Afraid maybe the latter.
Councilor Palmer,
I'll move that we.
that's it. Okay, seconded by Councilor Butler. Any final questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. Motion carried. All right, next we have provincial rebate, internet rebate, Starlink. Councilor Thompson, you asked this to be on the agenda, so I'll hand it over to you.
I just asked Brian if they had a chance to review Eden Lake and Garden of Eden, the list that they provided for the, has there been any movement on that?
Yes and no. We were actually supposed to meet today with Development Nova Scotia, and they canceled the meeting due to illness on their side. So it is scheduled for next week. And really, from our standpoint, it's their program. They set the rules around the program. So what we are basically, we'll meet with them, but really if there's clusters of homes and there's one or two within that cluster, our basic, I guess, commentary to them is going to be change your database, include them in your database. Like, we're not going to object if you put one or two in. It's not a huge number. So for us to spend a lot of time going back and reviewing data and that, it's a waste of our time and effort when it's their program. All they have to do is change the database on their side because it is their database. So that would be our message next week, like to kind of work through that, but that's kind of where we're at with it. Our data is correct as to that point in time, and until we actually get the towers up and can validate service, like people that we're saying aren't serviceable, may actually be serviceable once we get the towers up and we validate, because our test towers that we have up today, the TV white space is actually outperforming what it was originally meant to do. So that's the non-line of sight. The LTE, which is line of sight, is actually underperforming based on the law, right? So the tree foliage and stuff is problematic on LTE. So until we get that up and running, it's going to be tough for us to validate. So I guess our message to them is, if one or two that they're all with a cluster and all the neighbors have, just change your database.
So we could just recommend that from Blue Mountain down, they should have access to Starlink.
There's pockets there that it might make sense to, but there's also pockets there that.
So just on that, you can go on the Develop Nova Scotia Starlink rebate site, punch in a community, and come up with the eligible addresses from that community. So why the service that was done was Eden, so Thomas Eden Lake and Garden of Eden. And there's 100 in that area mapped out, there's 146. There's 18 addresses, civics that are eligible for. And there's like, this is a list that was provided to me by a resident down there. He went around the area to figure out where all these eligible sites are. And there's 6 or 7 vacant lots. There's cottages. There's a house on there that hasn't been occupied for 22 years. There's a camp there that has no power. So out of that 18, at least half of them don't have a home, or they either don't have the ability to get internet because they don't have power. And then there's the mapping for this, and this is causing a lot of consternation throughout a lot of rural areas, because they're making phone calls to the MLA's office, and the MLA's office is saying it's the municipalities list that was provided to Develop Nova Scotia. They need to update their list. So it's almost becoming an advocate in Costello argument, because it's like, who's on first? The folks down in the Garden of Eden, they're very reasonable people. They understand rural living. It's a very remote area down there. And there's people there that would really like to have the $1,000 rebate for low incomes, but they have internet now. But they much prefer to have Starlink. They don't want to wait for high-speed internet. I'll give you an example. There's a lady that's 88 years old that lives at 3601 Sunnybray Eden Road. She's eligible. She doesn't have a computer. You wouldn't know that anyways, but she's eligible for Starlink. The house that's right beside her isn't. And then the house that's right beside that one is. So sandwiched in between it is not eligible. But the eligible ones are sprinkled all over this community. And it to the folks down there, it doesn't make sense. And they're looking for an explanation because they would most of the residents down there are seniors. And they would like to have access to this $1,000 rebate because they don't have considerable amount of disposable income on a monthly basis to invest in the Starlink program, which they're quite happy about because a lot of them, there's many that have it, and they during off of this during the hurricane, they were used as communication centers because they would have their Starlink system hooked up to a generator, and they had phone, internet. They had uninterrupted service where everybody else in the county had issues, and even more urban centers. But the folks on Starlink very happy with their service, but they need some explanations because it's not just one person. It's a very small community, and they all talk to each other. Especially now that they're cutting their bush down and all that stuff, and their trees, and they're all up talking to each other, and they're talking about this. And this doesn't make sense. So, and it doesn't make sense to the folks at the MLA's office. And there's a frustration with residents because you're getting one story from the MLAs that it's the municipalities list, and then our response back should not be that, oh, let them fix it. That's not what Development Nova Scotia is saying. They're saying that they were supplied a list, and that's the list they're going by. So there's a disconnect here somewhere, and it's not helpful to the residents down there. It's not just one person. Every permanent resident that lives in that area is wanting some answers on this, and need to do better. That's all I can say. And it's not just in Garden of Eden. This is in a lot of the rural areas.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Ward Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have to be very careful here as we're just about getting ready to get our high-speed internet up and going here. Our CAO said at the end of this year that if we start treating one road or one area different, then we're very suddenly going to have to look at a request from all the rest of the areas and say, let's do this. And yet all we're doing is going on ahead of our own system and saying, go ahead and put the other system in. Because we're going to get paid for the installation. In our case, there is no installation cost. And ours is going to be for the wireless anyway, for those that it reaches, $49 a month. Versus it's $169 a month for people on limited income. It may be a false feeling of comfort to think that you're going to get the installation paid for, and but you're going to end up paying a lot more in the long run. So are we really doing them a favor? I don't think it's the best thing we can do for our high-speed internet system that we're putting in for everybody to start making exceptions. The rule was set that if you weren't able to be served at the end of 2023, then you could put it in the Starlink. But otherwise, we're simply, just turning our own system here that we're going to put in. And we're also setting those people up for a fall because they're going to end up paying a lot more per month. If our system, when we get it going, doesn't work, then fine, go ahead and put it in. But I don't see Starlink making an exception for one road. There's going to be another road at West Branch or another road here somewhere next week. I think we have to stick by the rules that were put out. I don't know whose list they're going by, but those lists said that we would be able to provide internet to that household by the end of 2023 was the rule. I think we should stick with it.
Okay, thank you, Ward Parker. Deputy Ward Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification, I'm on the county internet line. It was perfect right through the store. So it wasn't there. So that.
Just on the development, Nova Scotia, the list was verified by us. It was their list. We just verified the list, so it's their database. They asked us for clarification on which properties would be served by the end of 23. We provided that list to them, but it was their database that was in essence verified. And the other point is on wireless, it can be as finicky that you can get the service and your next door neighbor cannot. And wireless is that way. But a month ago, and I think I've shared this with some people, I did training on radio for TMR radio emergency management in the room. If anybody knows the Stellarton Fire Hall, we did the training in the upstairs room. The instructor at the front of the room had a service from down towards Council Proctor's area was the tower. Person sitting next to me was the Eureka Tower, and the person at the other end of the room was the Mount Tom Tower. And those pick up the strongest signal. So within that room, 3 different towers provided the level of service. So it is that finicky and can be property to property. So unfortunately, we do have a tower going up in Eden Lake, so it could be just that way.
Okay,
So,
go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
what is the speed of the wireless service?
So it's 50-10.
So, on the worst day, Starlink's twice as fast as that. For these customers, and they're very happy with it. They're very happy with the service. Now, as far as affordability goes, gentlemen that I've been dealing with on this issue, another gentleman I'm dealing with, I asked him a couple times, if fire ran by your house tomorrow, would you take it? He said no. He said no for a number of the reasons I talked about around the storm, about connectivity. And he's in money now by using Starlink. Doesn't have landline anymore. Eliminated his satellite dish. Everything runs through Starlink. Everything. His television, his phone, his internet. He's got everything he wants. So this whole notion of faster, better is a fallacy. If I'm hearing two different stories about the list that's supplied and verified by Develop Nova Scotia. So the Develop Nova Scotia could essentially go in and override the list that was supplied by, was it supplied by the municipality or was it supplied by?
It came from them.
Okay.
And we verified the list. They can open up the program to everybody in 50 County if they want to. It's their program. They set the rules. We're not setting rules. Their program was that if, and it's the way most government programs work, you do not overbuild.
I totally get that.
Right, and that's what their program is. So they basically said their program was to expire at the end of 2023. So if somebody was not to be serviced by then, they would get the money out the door by end of 2023. That's their rule. That's not our rule. That's all on that.
But the issue that the folks down there have, they don't want to wait. They don't want to wait. They've waited and waited and they've waited for a project to develop over the last 6 years. And a lot of them have given up on. So we can talk about not wanting to compete with somebody else, but we're in private business. This is what this is. And these folks, they want to have that option, and they want to have the option, and they want to have the ability to claim that rebate that they feel was the neighbors are getting, and why aren't they? So somebody's gonna give them the answer. I can't give them, other than that, there's a list out there that they're going by, and that's what they're sticking to. So, and again, this is not just relegated to this particular area of the county. This is going on in a lot of more rural and remote areas of Pictou County. And they're frustrated. They don't have access to this program. And I feel for them. So if there's can be some resolution as to a conversation with Develop Nova Scotia. If they're allowed to adjust that, then that's what we should be suggesting that they do. Because these guys down here deserve better than this. Because it's not a very accurate situation, so. I don't have an answer to give with gentlemen I call tomorrow, so which is disappointing.
Okay, Councillor Boyles?
Yeah, it just, I don't know, maybe I'm confused here, but I thought that back when we decided to put the internet through, take it on our own, that we voted to do it and stick together and do it no matter what we had to do, so. To me, there's a lot of people out there, like I mentioned in Blue Mountain and all over the place that would love to have it faster, but they're waiting, people are waiting, and hopefully, by, as they say, through 2023, it will be there. So I just don't understand why, one councillor's around talking to them about other things when we got our own agenda here and trying to get our own internet going. It's just puzzling to me, that's all.
Okay, Councillor Parker?
Thank you. I want to point out two things. Develop Nova Scotia is one we tried to work with. They covered the numbers repeatedly, so that we could not get that money. Okay, I have zero faith in Develop Nova Scotia. Done. Secondly, this is Premier Tim Houston's problem. He's the one that came here and said, we're gonna do Starlink, the hell with you guys. Let them do Starlink. Okay. Problem with Nova Scotia controls Develop Nova Scotia. End of story.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. We'll move on to community announcements. Is there any community announcements this evening? Go ahead, Councillor Boyles.
Yeah, there's a kitchen party at the Hillside Hall every Friday from 6:30 to 9, $5 a person. Players are free and lunch provided, so why don't you join us?
I see that's well attended on Facebook.
Yeah.
Your hall's hopping in there. Any other, go ahead, community announcements, go ahead, Councillor Parker.
This Saturday, October 22nd, 10:30 a.m. at the Union Center Community Hall. There will be I guess you'd call it an event commemorating the late William Woodrow. The naming of a small brook in our community is the Village Woodrow Brook. Premier's been invited, Malays have been invited, the board has been invited. I want to personally extend an invitation to every councillor here. Councillor Boyles has got a special invitation because his uncle, Alex Boyles, served on board the Eastern Day, which is where the explosion occurred on October 23rd, 1969. It took 9 lives. I expect the event will last about an hour. That's how long the politicians are. I understand that there will be some certificates presented, and I understand that some of the family of the late William Woodrow cousins, maybe his sister, will be in attendance. So at 10:30 a.m. Union Center Committee Hall. We want to leave a few minutes early because we're putting a subway in Union Center and a lot of construction work around it.
Remind us of that. Okay, perfect. Any other community announcements this evening? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to emergency resolutions. Emergency resolutions tonight, councillors. Okay, well, seeing none, I'll call for adjournment. I'd like to thank everyone. Nice to see you all, and we'll see you at the November council meeting. And meeting adjourned.
Sorry.
Yes. You don't pay it, right?
It's Saturday, Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah, just take my truck all the time.
Yeah. I'll email everybody as well. No problem. We'll talk this to the lady before I apologize. I do, it's like, after doing, it's like 30 or 40 things. Oh, okay.
Don't, you have to call